What's up everybody, welcome to Balkan Moto. We're back and the cafe racer is finally fixed, so let's check that out. Okay, so like I said, the bike is done, or rather fixed, and let's just go over the things that I did change on it that have drastically improved how it handles and how it behaves overall. So first we can start with the forks. The old fork seals, or oil seals rather, were kind of dated and they weren't leaking, but they needed replacement, and I had started to see some oil leaking, so it was just a good idea to do it. The other thing that we upgraded, I replaced the springs inside with progressive springs. Progressive being the brand, but also the type of spring. So now the bike behaves quite a bit differently. It has an initial soft kind of compression, and then it bites a little bit harder and kind of supports the weight much better. So that's a lot better than before. The other thing that I replaced on them is I replaced the caps with adjustable caps instead of the air pressure ones. And the spacers that are inside I've also changed to match my weight and the stance of the bike, such that the static sag on the front suspension is actually correct for me, so that the bike is not under suspended or over suspended. Similar adjustments were done to the rear suspension. In the last finale of the build, I talked about how I would be replacing the rear suspension this season. I ended up not replacing it. I just ended up retuning it to fit my specs, and actually it behaves quite well right now. What else? The levers for the clutch and the front brake were also replaced with these adjustable ones that I've adjusted to my spec, but also the master cylinders are mounted upright, so that when I am riding, the valves are not actually sucking in air, but rather only fluid. The other thing along with those that was replaced was the steel braided lines. So as you can see, for the front brake, they go down to the right side caliper, and then from here over to the other side, to the other caliper. Similarly for the clutch line has been completely replaced as one single steel braided line all the way down to the bottom slave cylinder. The wiring harness used to be a complete mess and used to be all kind of bunched up here or just behind the steering column. I ended up trimming off quite a bit from it, and now it's much cleaner, much better tucked in. And along with that, new horns were installed and wired in, so that now they sit on kind of both sides. Along with the rewiring of the harness, and the new levers, I actually ended up gaining some additional features. One being being able to start the bike by squeezing the clutch when I'm in gear. As well as the flasher on the right side actually works now. The other big upgrade was obviously the tires. So I got some Continental Conti Road Attack 2s, front and back. So the fronts are 110, 80, 18, and the back are 130, 80, 817. These were picked for a specific reason, just to make sure that the suspension setup for the bike actually matches me just right, and I get the right amount of rake and trail, so that it's not a death machine, but rather it functions well. And the other improvement, which is the most obvious, is the saddlebags. So I ended up making these low profile saddlebags that kind of sit on both sides of the bike. They make it look a little more beefy, but they definitely provide the practicality that I needed. Right now in them I have the manual for the bike, a toolkit, and a few other things, amongst which is the camera and mic for making these videos. So that's super practical. Now let's talk about some of the problems that I had with the bike. Okay, so one of the first problems I had with the fixed series that I just finished was with the steel braided lines. I ended up cheaping out and buying some Chinese ones off Amazon, which upon installation I realized that they actually weren't holding pressure and were leaking fluid from the mounting points. So those were thrown out right away. I had to buy new brake lines from, and I believe these ones are from Drag Specialties, with the universal mounting points at the end, so that you can change out the fittings to whatever type of fitting fits your needs best. The other thing that I had a problem with in terms of steel braided lines is the way I had routed the clutch line was such that it was actually being pinched by the tank, so it had no slack in it. And after a few rides, it ended up actually snapping the good quality steel braided line right about here. So I ended up having to buy another one to replace that. And I think that's it. I mean, this build actually wasn't too complicated. Oh, actually, now that I remember, there was a little bit of a wiring conundrum that I had to deal with when I was reducing the harness, mostly because I had to take out a lot of the old connectors and reduce the amount of connectors, because now I'm not using a whole bunch of things. The old bike, for example, has self-canceling turn signals. That also has, along with that comes a whole unit, a whole bunch of other cables and sensors and things, as well as the old speedo and digital speedo and tachometer unit that had a massive set of cables that plugged into this old odometer cluster here, as well as into the harness. So that's all been eliminated now, and I've actually left the speed configurator right here so that I can actually reconfigure things should I ever need to. So it's actually accessible, and I don't have to like take the tank off or do any of that weird shit. So that's it in terms of issues. Let's talk about cost. Alright, so what did it cost to fix the Cafe Racer? Actually not too bad. If we take a look at what it cost us so far, which is the $1,700 for the two bikes, the $2,113.23 for the first build series, and now into the second series, we're actually less than both of those. So the total amount came to $1,053.77, putting the total at just under $5,000 at $4,867. Now, in terms of what actually costs money in this fixed series, was obviously the levers. Those were about $60. The steel braided lines, the initial ones that I bought, were combined the clutch and the brake, were all together just under $60. But I threw those out, so then I bought new ones, which were just about, what is that, $230. So you can tell the difference there. $230 versus $50 makes a difference. The other big cost item was the tires. That was another $310. The fork caps were $42, and we have the springs, which were $144. The clutch line was another $77. The banjo bolts and washers and fittings were $53, as well as the fork seals were another $47. So altogether, a bunch of items that were right around $50 each but all needed for the overall. And this leaves us where we are today, with a bike that's actually quite reliable, much safer to ride because of safety in the case of tires, suspension, brakes, as well as lighting and horn. So much safer on the road. It's actually configured and set up for me to ride, so it's actually safer, even more safe for me specifically to ride it. So yeah, altogether the bike is fixed. Now that doesn't mean it doesn't have its issues. So let's talk about some of those. One of the unforeseen issues that I actually experienced with the bike is now that everything is set up for me in terms of suspension, the stance on the bike is a little bit sprawled out. So my legs fit right under me. As you can see, the peg is here and the seat is there, which is comfortable, but my hands end up being stretched out and I end up like almost lying down on the bike. So that's great, but after about 40 minutes, lower back starts to give out, and then I end up sliding forward on the seat, which puts me right on the tank, and that's not the most comfortable thing. And the seat actually doesn't have much padding right here, so then your ass starts to get sore. So I think what the fix I need is actually to move two things actually. One, to get rear sets so that my feet actually fit a bit further back, but also to reupholster that seat and get more padding on it. Since the front is already kind of set in place, I can only really move these down, not really up. I mean, I could mount them on top, but that would change the entire look of the bike completely, which is going to make it look more like a bobber than a cafe racer. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to keep them here, and I could twist them more inwards like this, but then if I go full lock, the bars will actually end up hitting the tank. So I don't want to do that, and as you can see, I've done that from the previous way I had it set up, and that's not a good thing. So in a future series, we're definitely going to take a look at fixing these things. Another thing that I didn't expect but ended up happening, so the saddlebags were designed to have a flat top. So this one's kind of flat, but when I straddle the bike, I end up pressing right here and kind of squishing the bag itself. So you can see the other one is already kind of, because I put my left foot down more often, it's almost been flattened out. So I'll probably have to figure out some sort of way to make the bag top a little more stiff so that it retains its shape and actually looks the way it's supposed to look. But that will be for another day. The other things that I would love to be able to do is look at replacing the exhaust with something a little bit newer, mostly because this is a really old exhaust and it sounds okay. It doesn't sound great, but I feel like some of the piping on it has been corroded to the point where it's not really doing a good job. And along with that, if we're putting on a more efficient exhaust, I'd like to take a look at redoing the air boxes. And for that, I was thinking redoing the entire airbox setup on the carburetors with something 3D printed that has a little bit more direct airflow or more efficient airflow, let's say, to the carburetors. That would probably mean that we need to rejet the carburetors, but we'll see. That's just something that I would definitely like to do, but we'll see if I ever get to it. Either way, that's it in terms of issues and things that I'd like to consider changing. Also, I forgot to mention, of course, paint. Right now it's kind of all over the place. I don't know if the camera picks this up, but actually the leather emblem and the bag are kind of the same color, but the seat is a different brown and the handlebars, the grips are a different brown. So I'd like to color match all of them. If I'm going down the route of paint, I probably will disassemble the whole thing and try to get things repowder coated. So the frame, the fork sliders, the tank, So pretty much everything, and get it to look like one of the concept drawings that I did in the start of the previous series. Alright, now that the bike is done, much like last time, the only thing left to do is to go get some coffee. Make sure to tune in into the next season of the cafe race, where I will be hitting up different coffee shops, bars, bakeries, all in the Halton Hills or Halton region. So that would be Guelph, Kitchener, Acton, Georgetown, Milton, and a bunch of the small little towns in the area. So make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell for notifications when new videos become available. Make sure to check me out on Instagram at BalkanMoto2018, and check out balkanmoto.com, where I'll have the article for the new cafe race season with the map and each of the episodes. Also, make sure to tune into the channel, because soon we're going to be having new series with a new garage build. So make sure to check that out. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.